Many Chargers players have high expectations going into the season, but which player will make the biggest leap from 2021 to 2022?
You are Locked On Chargers, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Chargers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, and welcome into the Locked On Chargers podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Wade, joined as always by my co-host, David Droegemeier, and we've been covering the Chargers together for over 6 seasons, but we're heading into our 5th season as the host of the Locked On Chargers podcast, bringing you your team every day. Thank you guys for making us your first listen today, and to make sure you never miss the show, go subscribe to the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and also follow the show for free on all platforms wherever you get your podcast from. But David, on today's show, you put out a great post on Twitter about which Charger will be the most improved in 2022, which is kind of a tricky question, but a lot of candidates were up there and we got the answers from the fans and who they thought was going to be the most improved. And a couple of third-year players or second-year players top that list with Asante Samuel Jr. and Josh Palmer. So we'll talk about them. We'll talk about Jalen Guyton, Kenneth Murray, and maybe Justin Herbert will be the most improved player going into 2022. But today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. So, David, this was a good poll that you put out. And it wasn't even a poll, but you just put out the post, and we wanted to see, because that means when you put the post out, then you got to put your name on it, right? Now you're putting your name next to who you think is going to be the most improved player instead of doing it anonymously through a poll. And Josh Palmer was number one of the guys who was commented for in this. And I think it's a good call because he is a guy that I think impressed as a rookie. I mean, you look at his season, 33 catches, 49 targets, 353 yards, and 4 touchdowns. And obviously there's a good amount of space for him to improve. That's not a season where you're saying, okay, well, it's going to be hard for him to top that. I mean, I think for him, you're expecting him to do bigger numbers than he did last season.
Yeah, I think you are. I mean, you look at Josh Palmer, and I think when he got drafted by the Chargers in the 3rd round, it was somewhat of a surprise. I don't think that was a position at the time that people around the Chargers and fans out there thought that the Chargers were going to target. And, it turns out that Josh Palmer got a lot more opportunities than people were expecting. And I think that was because he showed that he was going to be a professional and he was going to work his butt off at this from the very, very beginning. That work ethic showed itself when they were talking about how often he would sit there after practice and get those one-on-one reps with Justin Herbert in. And that really, really paid off. In those big moments, you saw, some big touchdowns, them go to him in the Patriots game in the last couple of seconds of the game, of course, against the Raiders, where he had another really, really important big touchdown. Josh Palmer really grew throughout the year. And I think it's really easy to look at that and say, this guy is going to grow even more going into 2022.
When I think you look at the factors of why would this player improve, right? And I think the first thing that you look at is just another year getting connected with Justin Herbert, another year of those two guys getting on the same page. Because unlike the rest of the receivers, right, he's only going into his 2nd season with Justin Herbert. Jalen Guyton, Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, all those guys are going into year 3 with Justin Herbert. But for him, this is only his 2nd season. They've only had 1 season, for them to kind of get on the same page. And we know they've been putting in work to do that. He was doing that last year, right? Staying out to practice, doing all of those things. And I think those plays on the money downs that you're talking about are really what make me think that he's going to be in for a bigger season. Because the hard thing is even when you're, getting a lot better, you're still sharing targets with Mike Williams and Keenan Allen, right? So there's only so many targets to go around. So it's hard to say, he's going to have a full breakout season because it's like at best he's probably going to get 3rd in targets, right, with all the wide receivers, and that's not including, Gerald Everett. It's not including Austin Eckler. But you just saw a lot there. The route running was great. Not dropping the ball was great. He only had 1 drop all season, a 2.9 drop percentage, which is really good. Averaged 1.2 yards per route run, which is not great, but it was also better than what Jalen Guyton did, which is basically the person he's going to be going up against. And I think that's the big thing here, David, is which of those guys is going to be on the field enough. Last year it was Jalen Guyton. This year it's Josh Palmer to try to be that number 3 guy and to somehow make your stamp on a very talented offense.
Well, and it's such a difficult question to answer because they're two different types of receivers. I mean, they're
Right.
doing two different jobs for you. I mean, Josh Palmer is your prototypical wide receiver, your wide out receiver, a guy that can, thrive on the outside, that can run crisp routes. He can also work in the slot. I feel like he's a versatile wide receiver, a guy that's got strong hands, is pretty decent in the contested catch situations. One of the big parts of his game that I actually liked last year is that 100 of his yards that he accumulated came after the catch. That's 28.3% of all of his yards. So when he had the ball in his hands, he did some pretty good work with it. And I think that first year, whenever you get into the league, it's all about kind of proving yourself, not only, to the fans, but more importantly to your teammates, that you're going to be where you need to be and that you're going to make those plays. Now that they know he's going to be able to make those plays, and not only make those plays, but make them in the highest leverage situations, he's going to get a lot more of those opportunities to continue to show that he can do that and thrive doing it.
Yeah, and I mean, he played pretty well. There's obviously room for him to be the most improved player if he totally breaks out, if he has to fill in, get more snaps because something happens ahead of him. I mean, he would have a chance to kind of put up those numbers that would make you think, oh, like, look what this guy did. I think the other thing is just, too, I think that the average yards per catch is going to go up. It was only 10.7 because
Yeah.
I think that there's going to be more deep passes to him, and he's not the fastest guy. But I do think, you're probably going to have most of the time either him or Jalen Guyton on the field. But the one thing, even though with, his probably mediocre, I guess, 40 time is just he's a really good separator at the third level. Even though
Yeah.
he's not blazing past people, he knows how to create separation. And there was a few times last year where him and Herbert just missed, right? Like the throw was
Yeah.
missed. They just weren't necessarily on the same page. Those are the things that could cut back this year, which could lead to a bigger season. But there was easily the second closest player to him was Asante Samuel Jr. on this, right? He had 14 or 15 comments. Josh Palmer had 16 or 17. So he was right there. And
Oh,
I
yeah.
think the reason it seems like he could improve so much, David, I mean, is because of how poorly his season ended. 2 concussions, missed 5 games, and he left a lot to be desired, especially down the stretch of the season, but started off to such a hot start and showed a lot of the skills that you think you want to see in Brandon Staley's defense. I think this is a great call for someone that could be the most improved player next year.
I think there's a lot of reasons to believe this. I think obviously just getting comfortable playing at the NFL level and having the confidence to know that he can really perform well at this level, whether it is outside, whether it is in the slot. I think Asante Samuel Jr. proved last year that he belongs at this level and he's here to stay. I mean, 42 tackles, 11 missed tackles out there. I mean, that's, something that needs to get cleaned up, obviously going into next season, but he only allowed 3 touchdowns all season, had 2 interceptions. So, I mean, I think that was a great rookie season for Asante Samuel Jr. And now he's not going to be the number one guy. He's not going to be the man. He's not going to be going up against all of those number one wide receivers that he was probably going up against last season. It's, those assignments are going to go to JC Jackson now. So I think, there's going to be a lot more opportunities for him to get more interceptions, I think. And I think that's another reason why he can really show incredible improvement, because he was already in good positions last year with a good amount of pass breakups. But now that he's not going to be drawing those number one assignments, I think that he's going to get a lot of opportunities to see those INT numbers climb considerably.
Yeah, well, and I mean, you think he probably is going to get targeted a lot if he's the guy
I think
opposite
so.
of JC Jackson, right? So he's going to have a lot of opportunities to make plays on the ball.
Yeah.
As a rookie, he was tied to it for third of all rookies in forced incompletions and interceptions combined. So he's right
There you
there
go.
with the top guys in the league. Sertan was up there at 13, tied with someone, but I think it was Eric Stokes Jr. But I think that he's already shown he has that promise. I think that's just the poor end of the season, right? Because if
Yeah.
you look at what he did, 5 of the first 7 games that he played, he allowed 25 yards or less,
Yeah.
right? Down the stretch of the season, though, it was big plays. It was kind of seeming like he got lost at times.
Yeah.
6 plays of 30 plus yards allowed last season. That's where I think he's going to improve, right? If you're
Oh,
looking
yeah.
for that major improvement, that's somewhere where I think he's going to majorly improve. I think he's going to have more help around him, which is
100%.
obviously going to help. But I do think that just being in your second season, learning what you have to do, and having a full offseason this year when you're not a rookie, I think it's going to make a huge difference. And unlike Josh Palmer, like we think he's going to be starting and playing a significant amount, a majority of the snaps on the defensive side. So he's going to have the opportunity to sink or swim. And that is kind of what it's like in the NFL. But I think with him, you have a lot of hope that he'll be able to swim because he is a fighter. He's a fiery dude. His mic'd up that came out the other day at OTAs was great. I
He's
love
got that
Justin
swagger,
Herbert.
man. He got that
Oh,
swagger that you
totally.
love.
He has that like calm collectedness too. Like
Yeah.
he seems like he's relaxed. He seems like he's out there. And I think when you're trying to learn so much as a rookie, for someone like him who's such an instinctual player, like I think the more he does, the less he has to think, I think the more his game is going to open up and he can fully just kind of rely on his tools to do the special things we've already seen him be able to do as a rookie. But one of the surprising guys to me, David, that kept getting brought up was Kenneth Murray. And there's a lot of Chargers fans that think he could still be the guy that could be the most improved player going into 2022. So we'll talk about if we're buying in that hype. And a surprise guy in Jalen Guyton making the list today as the fourth most commented player in this discussion. So we'll talk about those guys coming up after this. But Asante, you've seen the moments. Like, okay, you could be really good, not just good, right? It's just now it's finding those moments more consistently. But if you're trying to make a moment that lasts forever with a piece of jewelry, the only place to do it is BlueNile.com. You can celebrate all of life's special moments, from creating a custom engagement ring of your dreams to gifting a classic and timeless jewelry piece, all at the prices that you won't find at a traditional jeweler. Whether you're ready to pop the question or celebrating a milestone moment in your life, find jewelry as unique as her with the modern convenience of online shopping at BlueNile.com. Build the engagement ring of her dreams or celebrate life's special moments with fine jewelry, and no matter what you're looking for, Blue Nile has experts on hand 24/7. So right now, guys, make your moment sparkle with jewelry from BlueNile.com, and Locked On Chargers listeners get $50 off of purchases of $500 or more. This podcast exclusive includes engagement rings. Just make sure you use the promo code Locked On. Promo code Locked On, all caps, one word. Plus, every order is insured, ships free, and arrives in a discreet package. So make sure you guys go check it out at BlueNile.com today. I also need to tell you guys that the official auto parts place of the Locked On Chargers podcast, the only place you go to find any of your auto parts, of course, is rockauto.com. And I've used them several times. So this one's very easy for me to talk about because it's just convenient. It's cheap. It's convenient. You're finding great prices and you're finding the parts that you need. For me, I don't know a ton about cars, but one thing I don't want to do is I don't want to have to go to a chain auto parts store. I don't want to have to talk to somebody at the counter. So then he knows how little I know about cars, because I expose myself every time I get one of those opportunities to make myself sound dumb about cars. If there's a person in front of me asking me questions, I literally did it today when I got my smog for my car for my registration. Like, I will embarrass myself. I don't have to do that at rockauto.com. I can go to the website. I can type the type of car I have in a few easy clicks. I found the parts that I needed, and I'm getting them at a better price. So why not get a better price at a family-owned business with rockauto.com? So make sure you guys go to rockauto.com right now to see all the parts they have available for your car or truck, and write Locked On in there. How did you hear about us box? So they know we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. Visit rockauto.com. All right, David. Well, we have a couple of guys, more surprise guys. I mean, I think when we talk about guys like Asante Samuel Jr., guys like Josh Palmer, I mean, they had promising rookie seasons. So it's no surprise to see that those guys are really thought of as guys who can majorly improve going into year two. And there are positions, I think corner is definitely one of them. Some receivers break out as rookies, but not usually when they have the other guys that Josh Palmer shares the field with.
Yeah.
We're not getting that in this one, because in this one, we're getting Kenneth Murray, right? Who was drafted the same year as Justin Herbert. Now he's going into year three. And we have Jalen Guyton. But the Kenneth Murray one was the more surprising one to me, because I think he's been more disappointing out of the two of them. Because Jalen Guyton, he's an undrafted free agent, right? I mean, it's kind of one of those feelings like, whatever you get from him, if he is already a success story by
100%.
Huge success for Jalen Guyton to, come from not even getting like a catch with Phillip Rivers in his last season, just randomly joining on with a team to what he has been able to do.
From Justin Herbert from back-to-back years. Absolutely.
100%. Kenneth Murray, though, he's a first-round pick. He came in, he had 100-plus tackles as a rookie, still had a lot of moments where he really struggled, but there was a lot of moments where he had a lot of promise, too. Then he switches defenses and goes into last season with an ankle injury pretty much right off the bat when the season started. Didn't have any explosiveness, right? Was super late to react to the football, got in trouble, making tackles way too far down the field, and ended up losing his spot until, later on in the season, he was used as kind of a specialist. For what reason, we don't know. But I think the big thing here, David, is just, can you buy into it again? I know I've told everyone before, he cannot be my breakout player of the year candidate, and most improved is a little bit different, but it's hard for me to imagine at this point, before I see it, that he's going to be the most improved player in 2022. But at the same time, obviously, he has a lower bar than some of these other guys.
He has a lower bar in some respects and a higher bar in others because, I mean, he was a first-round pick. So, I mean, that expectation is always going to follow him wherever he goes. But he has had a very, very tough start to his NFL career. Injury after injury. And then last year playing out of position. I mean, he had 363 total snaps last year. 113 of those snaps was over the tackle, rushing. And that was an unmitigated disaster.
Playing
He was
on the
awful.
edge, yeah.
You put him in a position to where he really did not showcase any ability to succeed, and you threw him out there over and over and over again, and that did not work. So I think at least going into this season, they should have a very clear understanding of what Kenneth Murray can do and what Kenneth Murray cannot do. And I think that coupled with the just absolutely much, much better talent that's going to be surrounding him, hopefully, and most importantly, good health. If he is very, very healthy going into this season with the defensive line that's going to be in front of him, going to be able to handle their business, hopefully he's going to be able to make tackles closer up to the line of scrimmage. And we can see that Oklahoma version of Kenneth Murray that we saw on tape before the Chargers selected him in the first round.
And shout out to Glenn Jenkins, because in his comment, he said, I'm hoping Kenneth Murray gets back to how he looked at Oklahoma. So I think that's obviously what you hope to. I mean, it's hard to hope for that specifically at this point, but like that's what you're hoping to see, is just a little bit of a glimpse of what made him special when he was in college. I mean, I'm not going to lie. I didn't know if I loved trading up for him, but I didn't think he'd be a bad player when he came out. And I'm not saying that he still can't become a better player and a much better player, because obviously, I mean, he had the worst average depth of tackle in the NFL last year within, at least 100 run defense snaps. So that's about as bad as it gets as far as a run defender. And, just as a pass protector or trying to break up passes, he only didn't have one pass that was targeting him not get completed, basically, right? It was like 14 out of 15 passes thrown into his area.
142.9 passer rating allowed, 132 yards given up. That was really, really bad. And I think obviously you can attribute that probably somewhat to the ankle injury, but
yeah, sure.
Still, I mean, that's completely awful. And it's also kind of on the coaching staff too, for putting him in those situations. And he's repeatedly shown that he could not do the job in that situation. So not good at all.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you want to find a way to use your guy who's a first-round pick, right? And at your linebacker now, you got guys like Troy Reeder, you have Drew Tranquil. We'll see how much someone like Kyle Van Noy plays there, a couple of second-year players in Nick Niemann and Amen. But I think with that position, like there's not a lot of guys who you think are going to just be that main guy. It's like, hey, if he came out and started playing super well, he could still be that guy. It's just hard to expect it. And it's hard for me to say, hey, I think he's going to be the most improved. I can tell you one thing, though. He has a lot of room for it. I mean, we know he's working hard, right? He's coming back. But the thing is just he's coming back from another injury, too. So he's already missing time again this season to really get back to where we think he should be at. But we do have another guy we need to get to in this segment, though, because we do have Jalen Guyton, who's definitely not the name I thought. I mean, for sure. I mean, I think when you're looking at Josh Palmer and Jalen Guyton both being in the top 4 of people that were brought up to be the most improved player, Josh Palmer, as a former third-round pick, makes a lot of sense, and he did some good things last year. Jalen Guyton had more yards than him, had more catches than him, had one less touchdown than him, and has that deeper speed, right? As not elite deep speed, but at least can threaten you deep, and made, one of the best plays of the season last year against the Giants on that 65-yard bomb by Justin Herbert. But I think for him to improve, though, it is hard, because I think for me, the thing that catches me up on it is just he had more targets in 2020 than he had in 2021.
That's
so
right.
He already had that eaten into last year by the addition of Josh Palmer. Can Josh Palmer and Jalen Guyton break out? No. Can they both improve?
Yeah.
Yes, but I think out of the two of those guys, like the person I would think it would have a chance to break out more, I think would be Josh Palmer, just because I think to some extent with Jalen Guyton, even though he's still gotten better, I still think last year was his best season. I just think that he kind of is what he is at this point in this offense.
I don't know, Daniel. I think I actually might challenge that a little bit. I think what happened in 2020 that we saw a lot with Jalen Guyton is that there was a lot more deep passes to him, and I don't think he got as many of those opportunities last season. And I think with the offensive line that Justin Herbert is going to have in front of him, and with more command of the offense, I think you might see more deep shots, and I think that might mean more opportunities for Jalen Guyton to get more of those big plays that like we saw in 2020. He only had 3 touchdowns each of the last 2 seasons, so I think that's another area where he can improve his game. But like Coach Staley was saying, with Jalen Guyton, if he shows that he can really complete more of those, short to intermediate routes, I think that's going to open up things for his long game when he does go shrieking down the field looking for a long bomb from Justin Herbert.
Yeah, and I mean, when he was talking about that, he wasn't talking specifically about Jalen Guyton, right? He was just saying that how it would help the Chargers if they had that true deep threat. And he said it's not just being a deep threat, it's being able to do everything else well, so that people are afraid of what you're going to do underneath and over the top. I don't know if Jalen Guyton's ever going to become that complete of a player to do that and truly threaten underneath and threaten over the top. Maybe. I mean, I think the point about the offensive line is good because it should be better. It should give you more time to develop plays downfield, but is he still going to be out snapping Josh Palmer, right, this year? Because he did last year, and it seems like it's hard to believe. And when he was on the field last year, it wasn't super efficient. I know he's sharing the field with Mike Williams and Keenan Allen, but his 1.03 yards per route run ranked 90th out of 101 qualifying receivers last year. So when he was out there, it wasn't necessarily meaning he was being super productive, at least on a snap in and snap out basis. It was more of like every once in a while kind of a thing. More deep passes, having the ability to set up more deep throws, I think gets him more productive. And I think maybe he has a more efficient season. He still caught, at a 15% higher catch rate this year than he did in 2020. So I think that's obviously a promising sign. But the average yards per catch dropped a little bit. He still averaged more than Josh Palmer.
14 and a half is pretty good.
14 and a half dropped down from 18 plus, though, what he had in 2020, right? When he was, that's a more explosive average, but he was only catching half the passes that were thrown his way. So
his yards after catch per reception was actually 5, which was actually, pretty
2 yards higher than Josh Palmer, right? That's the thing, too. I mean, there was a couple of weird ones in there, and obviously if you break away, that's going to pad it, but he didn't have a lot of like breakaway touchdowns, right? I mean, even the one he caught from Justin Herbert, he caught it on the goal line, so he wasn't getting anything from that.
Right.
Yeah, and he had that 4th down catch too, where he came back and made a dude miss to get it, and he showed himself to be a little bit more trustworthy, but the 4 drops obviously still an issue, right? Having a 11.4 drop percentage isn't great. And I think it's just hard for me to imagine, like last season he had 448 yards, like and Josh Palmer was less than 400. So like, is he going to get that much better where like he's going to put in like a 700 yard season with Josh Palmer already
and with Gerald Everett into the fold now? I don't know, man. I think that's really hard to expect that to happen. But for Jalen Guyton, I just hope that with another year in this offense for Justin Herbert, that he can see more deep shots. I mean, that's what he's brought into the table to do. So I think with Gerald Everett creating havoc and really getting those yards after catch in the short and intermediate parts of the field, it might open up those opportunities for Jalen Guyton.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible, obviously. And I think, he didn't see enough last season. And the problem to me still is that when he comes on the field, I don't think he can threaten enough of that other stuff. Like, I think that's part of the reason you didn't see him get involved in a lot of deep passes early on in the season last year. And everyone's like, where's Jalen Guyton? It's just because when he's out there, they know he's the fastest guy on the field, and I just don't know if he's been able to do enough underneath consistently enough when you see those yards per route run and you just see the inconsistency and the lack of protection to, think that he's going to have a huge jump going into 2022. I think he can be a better player, and he's improved every season. So I think he is going to improve going into 2022. It's just hard for me to say, out of those 2 guys, I'm picking Josh Palmer, just out of the 2 of them if I was given that choice. So I cannot say he's going to be the most improved player on the Chargers, just the way I see it right now. I think they can target him deep more, and I think they should. Hopefully that turns into the results that they're hoping for, because that is something that was a little bit lacking in this offense. But it wasn't Justin Herbert's fault, or maybe it was. But we're going to talk about Justin Herbert and maybe if he could be potentially the most improved player, even though he threw for 5,000 yards and 40 plus touchdowns last year on the Chargers. What is a major improvement from those numbers even look like? We're going to get into that and maybe a couple of other guys who might be able to throw their hat in the ring coming up after this. But I hope David bets on Jalen Guyton being the most improved player and coming back and clapping back at me. But if you want to place any bets, the only place to go is betonline.net, the official betting sponsor of the Locked On Chargers podcast. And right now, guys, is a great time to get in on the action. I always tell you guys, But right now, you have the finals going on, and now it's 1-1. That's going to be a crazy series. I mean, that one has the makings of a 6 or 7 game series. You have the NHL playoffs going nuts, about to go into their finals, and you have baseball going on all the time. But if you guys only like to bet on football, that's okay too. You can go to betonline.net and look at the NFL futures. Justin Herbert sliding down a little bit, the second in favorite to win the MVP going into the season. So the odds are getting a little better, so we can all jump on it and make some money there. But you also have guys, 4 players in the top 26 on betonline.net and odds to win defensive player of the year. I'll give you a hint. It's JC Jackson, Derwin James, Joey Bosa, and Khalil Mack. So make sure you guys head to betonline.net because it's not just football, not just baseball, not just basketball. It's your favorite Vegas casino games. It's horse racing. It's esports. Whatever you're looking for, you can find it at betonline.net. So make sure you guys head to the website and use your mobile device today to find out the latest trends and the action at BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, David. Well, 1 or 5 people ended up asking us if Justin Herbert was going to be the player that could improve most going into 2022, because we put it out there on Twitter at lockedonlac to see what everyone thought or who everyone thought would be the most improved player going into 2022. And when we get to the Justin Herbert level, he was 5th. He was the 5th most comments that he got. And then everyone after that was like a couple here, a couple there. So we'll talk about some of the guys that kind of snuck in and still, I think, probably have a chance, especially in a couple of their cases, to be the most improved player. But a lot of people still think it's Justin Herbert. And I'm not even like totally against it, because I do think Justin Herbert can be a lot better, right? I mean, I think there's a lot of places where you can look and say, like, hey, could have done this, could have done this. He could have had, receivers not drop the ball. So technically that's not him being better, but it would lead to better results, obviously.
38 of them, to be exact.
Yeah,
just
exactly.
So we're being specific.
Right, but like the interceptions could go way down, right? The deep
yeah.
passes could go up. The efficiency could go up. The third down throwing could go up. There's a lot of things.
What is most improved, or what does success look like for Justin Herbert in year 3?
Well, and it goes kind of back to what we talked about on the mega crossover with the Chargers Unleashed and Chargers Chat Pod, and all those guys, was just like his stats could go down and he could have a better season. Like the raw gross numbers of it, you might not have 5,000 passing yards, and he could still have a better season. And the team could have obviously a much better season because there would be much more well-rounded team, and Justin Herbert isn't having to put the team on his back. That's the thing. But as far as like processing, right, how he's attacking defenses now, because we talked about it with the Joe Lombardi comments, he's in year 2 now. So now instead of worrying about the verbiage of the offense, now it's more, okay, well, how can I attack this defense, right? And we know it was a smart kid, and Joe Lombardi talks about his, stamina to learn things and just have stuff just thrown at him all the time and just be constantly learning and wanting to keep learning. There's a chance for him to improve in a big way, even with, borderline MVP numbers.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of these guys, you have to look at, do they have the opportunity to get better? Do they have the opportunity to be the most improved? Are they going to have the options? Well, obviously, Justin Herbert is going to have every opportunity to show that he is going to be even better. And I think there's a good amount of reasons why you can think that. I mean, like you mentioned, another year in an offense, which is never happened before. It's something I always like to remind you of. But
hasn't happened in a long time, you should say.
Yeah, it hasn't happened since high school, right?
Yeah.
So for Justin Herbert, with a much better supporting cast, a much better defense, I think that you're going to see him be able to take some shots down the field, but also with a better command and better understanding of the offense, and hopefully better chemistry with his wide receivers. You're going to see more efficient version of Justin Herbert and less interceptions. I think also less drops too. Like I said, 38 drops. I think that's going to regress a little bit down. So you could see some better numbers come out of that, and some great playmakers to go out there. This Chargers team has everything that Justin Herbert needs for him to have incredible success in year 3.
Well, and let's be honest, the other big thing about that is like Joe Lombardi and Shane Day have to kind of evolve and get better too, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, now Joe Lombardi's had a season to figure out what works and what doesn't with Justin. So like, he's going to have to keep adding the wrinkles now that he's had a season under his belt, the things that are going to even amplify Justin's tools more. Because when you have someone like that, I mean, the talent is unlimited, and like he could be potentially the most talented quarterback just out of raw talent, physical ability, all those things out of anyone in the NFL. Is up there with the Josh Allens and the Patrick Mahomes of the world. But when you look at his coaching staff, they have a lot to prove too going into their second season as an offense that put up really good numbers last year and is going into this season with playoff and potentially Super Bowl expectations.
I'm curious about one thing. Now that Justin Herbert is reportedly, at 245 pounds, do you think that maybe we could see some more design runs from Justin Herbert this year?
I doubt it. I mean, at least to an extent where like it's going to be a dramatic
Because
difference,
he's like
just
that
because.
Josh Allen size now.
Yeah, but he's not like he's not he's not as thick as Josh Allen, and all those numbers are always kind of speculative, anyways. Like, yeah, they asked him how much he weighed though, but like, what was he like 240 last year? So I don't know if it's an agreed.
238,
Okay,
237.
7 pounds,
Yeah,
sure. Okay, either way, we're arguing about semantics here. I mean, the thing is, what does Brandon Staley know? His job is directly linked to the health of his quarterback. I mean,
for sure.
Josh Allen, can truck stick dudes and stuff like that. I just don't see Brandon Staley and this team going in that direction because they know how important he is to the team. I think there's going to be, hey, we might catch you here, we might catch you there. But when you have the arm of Justin Herbert, yeah, you want to be able to roll out and make plays on the run, and you want to be able to scramble and pick up first downs when you have to. But he has plenty of a good arm to, do it with his arm and not his legs. Yeah,
No
that's
doubt.
a nice last resort, but I just don't think you're going to see, the QB powers or anything like that. And maybe a naked bootleg every once in a while to
Yeah, he
catch him
wasn't
stuff
really
like that.
that productive on the design runs either. He only had 23 yards on 27 design runs, but he was very, very effective on the scrambles. 36 scrambles for 279 yards.
Well, I think you also have to think about too, like those design runs. A lot of those are quarterback sneaks, right? Because the
Very
quarterback
true.
is designed to run, so you're not going to get a lot of yards
Yeah,
on those for the most part. But you're not seeing a lot of those, just plays where it's like, okay, hey, it's me, I'm taking it, and try to stop me. And when you
right.
did see some of those, like especially in 2-point conversion, I think we saw one. I think we saw some in the goal line. It doesn't seem to ever work out well, but he is a guy that makes quick decisions and, decides to tuck in and run, I think, pretty well, especially with that kind of internal clock that he has already. Only 2 seasons in is super, super impressive.
Oh,
His
yeah.
pocket poise is just insane for a
It's
guy,
awesome.
and can to be able to fire strikes under that heat too is something he's always done well. But David, to wrap up the show here, we have a couple of other guys that got a few votes, a lot of them spread out to a lot of different guys. Donald Parham is one, a guy that was mentioned a few times. Nazir Adderley is one guy that was mentioned a few times. Trey Pipkins. I mean, I think there was a lot of hope for Trey Pipkins. Like, 'cause I
Yeah.
think, everyone knows how big that would be for the Chargers if he is the most improved player and come out there, and even be better than the small sample we saw last season. And
Yeah.
another one's Jerry Tillery, right? Who gets a new defensive line coach now with Jay Rodgers going back to coaching interior guys, which is something he was world renowned for in his time with the Bears. Maybe that helps a little bit. Having Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa helps the most, and having
Yeah.
other talented defensive linemen with you as well. If you're looking at those guys, Dave, and you're thinking which one of these guys could improve most in 2022, who would you lean towards?
Man, I'm gonna go with Jerry. No, I'm just kidding. I can't, in good faith, go with Jerry Tillery again. I'm sorry. He's gonna have to show me, and I want him to. I do. I really want Jerry Tillery to go out there and show me on a consistent basis that he's gonna be able to do it down in and down out. But honestly, I think it's gonna be Nazir Adderley. I think he's really been on the cusp of putting it all together. I think you saw the that he's always been in pretty much the right spot, and he's been a very good last line of defense defender. And I think for Nas last year, you saw the physicality part of his game kind of unfold. And now I think if he's able to get the interceptions and turn those almost interceptions into actual interceptions, I think that's where he takes the next step. And I think he's going to have a lot more opportunities with a much better pass rush in front of him, them stopping the run on early downs and forcing opposing offenses to throw the football. I think Nas is going to get some interceptions this year. So I think out of those guys, I think it's Nas for me.
Yeah, I mean, I like that pick, and he's another guy. I think he's not in the Kenneth Murray, Jerry Tillery category, right? But I think probably his second season after his hurt rookie year, I picked him probably to break out and be the most improved player. And last year was Kenneth Murray, and so on and so forth. It'd be
Yeah,
hard. I mean, he's going to have the opportunity to do it. And, I mean, he does also have the incentive of being in a contract year, and he
absolutely.
also has the incentive of, hey, there's a guy coming up for your job in JT Woods a little bit. And I mean,
Oh,
both
yeah.
those guys can coexist, and they will.
Sure.
But Derwin's going to play deep sometimes too. And who's going to
Oh,
be
yeah.
that other guy lined up across from him, right back there with him? It could be one of those two guys, we think, as we see it right now. So I think there's a lot of reason to think, this year could be the year where it kind of all comes together for Nazir and having a more talented team in front of him, more talented cornerbacks that he's working with for sure, because there is such a big relationship, right, and communication that goes into the relationship with these corners and the safeties and where they
It's
all need to
essential.
be. It's huge. And he has been close. You have seen him kind of make those plays. and you're still kind of waiting to see that breakout season going into
I just
year
keep
4.
seeing that one play from Scary Terry. He makes that ridiculous catch where
Week 1,
Naza just keeps come flying in for the interception. And I'm like, there's no way that ball should have went through his hands and went into Terry McLaurin's. I just don't understand. It still does not make sense to me.
And it's not the only one. There's a couple in the end zone too where it's like he just gets his fingertips on him. And the pass rush is going to help. I mean, shout out to whoever put that in the Locked On LAC comments, because somebody used that with their answer for Nazir Adderley. Just more balls getting chucked up because there was a lack of pressure too often last year. There weren't just balls getting thrown up wildly with guys desperate to try to get first downs. And I think that's twofold. It's not having the pressure to get those wild throws enough. And it also was having too many manageable third downs, having too few, obvious passing down situations. Both things we think are going to improve in a major way in 2022. So I think that's it. Donald Parham, he had 20 catches last year. I think the addition of Gerald Everett hurts, because I think Gerald Everett's going to have a really good year. So I do think Donald Parham could obviously get better. I think he can have a monster touchdown season with the absence of Jared Cook, because he is that big time presence down there. I don't think he'll be the most improved. Trey Pipkins would be great for this team. Jerry Tillery, I think, could really be that guy, but we refuse to. No, I'm just kidding. I mean, he definitely is going to have the best chance, but he also has Morgan Fox there too to compete for snaps with. So if he's not getting it, especially early on, does he lose some of those snaps, right? But I think he has every incentive with that 5th-year option not picked up, with some fire behind him in a Morgan Fox, just like Nazir Adderley has with JT Woods, even probably worse than that, because I mean, you have a dude that you've already seen do it in Brandon Staley's defense. So he brought in one of his guys, kind of a thing there. So it is going to be interesting. I mean, I think the thing with this team is you hope that the talent that you brought in can either bounce back with the guys you took low risk deals on, like Morgan Fox and Kyle Van Noy and Bryce Callahan. You hope those guys can bounce back. And then you hope that other players like JC Jackson, Sebastian Joseph Day, Khalil Mack, those guys live up to the billing. But the rest of it's always going to be, can those other players, can those, guys who are still going to be major parts of the defenses, but aren't those household names yet, can those guys improve enough to fill in the cracks and really complete what they're trying to have be a great defense, right? Because you need all those guys to improve if this defense is going to be not just good or really good, but be one of the elite defenses in the NFL. It's going to take improvements from a lot of these guys. And for the offense to get a lot better, it's going to take some improvements on that side of the ball as well. But that is going to wrap things up for today's show. Remember, guys, we are 3 shows a week right now. The good news is we're trying to get the best guests that we've ever had on the show on right now. We're in the works with a lot of great things coming up. So make sure you guys are subscribed to the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel so you never miss it, and following the show for free on all platforms wherever you get your podcast from, because we have some big things on the horizon, and we appreciate you guys checking it out today. And we will try to always keep it Monday, Wednesday, Friday when we can, and then we'll let you guys know how it changes from there. So as of right now, we'll probably be back on Wednesday, but until then, make sure you're following us on social media at Locked On LAC on Twitter, at Locked On Chargers on Instagram, and on our Locked On Chargers Facebook page. You can also follow me on Twitter at Dan Talk Sports, and David Droegemeier on Twitter at DroTalkSD. We will try to get some Fan Mail Friday in this week, so make sure you guys get your voicemails in at 323-524-7924. But we have some big interviews and some big things coming out, and we'll be here always for the latest news. And if anything ever comes up, you can always guarantee we're going to have a show right after that to get in on the latest news. But that's going to do it for today. We'll be back with you guys probably on Wednesday. Until then, take it easy and go Balls.